Welcome to Whiz Education and the Math Whiz Suite. My name is Paul Malone, and today we're going to be exploring a little bit more about Whiz Education and the digital learning service which is being provided to students across the world. Whiz Education is an international company, and we partner with schools, districts and ministries of education to raise standards in math through virtual tutoring, digital-led resources for teacher-led instruction, and the application of best practices within blended learning. We're internationally proven. Around 15 years now, we've been working with educationists from around the world to deliver the best quality math curriculum, which we then align to local standards such as a Common Core. We're very much research-led. Our educationalists and data analysts are constantly looking at each of the exercises, lessons and tutoring journeys we provide to make sure they're delivering measurable learning outcomes. And we're pioneers in the use of virtual tutoring, which really takes adaptive learning through to the next level, simulating the behaviour of a human tutor. Underpinning Whiz Education is a belief that every child deserves a learning experience that caters to their individual needs and pace of learning, because as we all know, every child is unique. Since 2005, Whiz Education has been within the United States. Based from Seattle, Washington, we've been delivering tutoring journeys to children throughout the country. And currently, we're implemented in over 21 states and have adapted to multiple curricula, to local state standards when we first started, through to Common Core, where we presently are now. So what are we going to be looking at today? The first thing we're going to be looking at is the why behind MathWhiz. Why would schools and districts invest in our digital learning service? And in order to do that, we're going to be looking at some live data from an individual school. And next we'll take a quick look at one of the lessons so you can understand exactly the learning journeys that children are taking. And then we're going to be looking at a student experience. So what students see when they put their username and password in and log on to MathWhiz. And through this, you'll be able to see how we've taken adaptive learning, harnessed adaptive learning technology to produce a high quality virtual tutoring experience for every student. So to start with, I'm going to log on to a school account. I'll put a username and password in here. And here you're going to see in each school account two separate areas. The first area is called Teachers Resource, which is a library of all of our content to be able to use for teachers for whole group and small group instruction within the classroom. The second section is the reporting area, where teachers are able to see the results, the impact the learning service is having on their students' ability levels. Let's look now. As you can see, the reporting is broken down into three areas: school reports for principals, and class and student reports for the teachers. Today we're going to be looking at a third grade class, Mr. Turner, and two students from that class, Blake and Zachary. Let's do that now. And we're going to click on this tab up here, which is a comparisons tab, which is going to show you an achievement line of all the students within Mr. Turner's class. What you can see here is a typical distribution line in third grade classes across the United States. What you're going to see is about a 4-year gap in ability between the strongest students over here and the weakest students over here. So this is a reason why teachers across the United States are adopting our service, because they have a real challenge. How do they meet the individual needs and pace of learning of every one of those students, given a wide ability gap? But for Mr. Turner, it's actually a little bit worse than he thinks, because as well as having a wide ability gap, they also have strengths and weaknesses within different areas. To illustrate that, we're going to look at two individual students, Zachary and Blake. As you can see, both have a very similar achievement. When children first come onto MathWhiz, they receive an initial diagnostic assessment. That diagnostic assessment generates a math age. Math age is very similar to reading age. It's age expected progress through the curriculum. Let's have a look at Zachary now. So here we are. So as you can see, Zachary's been with us since September 2015. On average, he's been using MathWiz for 33 minutes a week. We encourage a sweet spot of about 45 minutes a week to get accelerated progress, but that's still not too bad. And over that period, he's progressed 2.5 years in the space of 18 months. So he's actually making some good progress. Next, we're going to look at the topics area to see how the MathWiz tutor actually works, how it aligns to Zachary's individual ability and profile. So this is Zachary's profile broken down topic by topic in math. I hope you can all see the red lines. So when Zachary first came onto MathWiz, he received that initial diagnostic assessment, and we've gone through each of the topic areas to find out what his strengths and weaknesses are. And as you can see, he had a particular weakness within measures and strengths within fractions and mental calculations. The blue bars represent the progress that Zachary has made since he's been undertaking MathWiz and receiving his individual learning journey. And as you can see, over time, extra attention has been paid to those areas of weakness, those potential learning blocks which could affect Zachary's confidence and his ability to be able to pick up what the teacher's saying in whole class instruction. And we provided him with a more rounded math profile, filling in those learning gaps to make sure that Zachary is prepared for classroom instruction. Now what I'm about to show you is actually very interesting. Remember that other student we picked out on the achievement line? We picked out Blake. Blake had a very similar overall achievement level to Zachary, but let's have a look at his profile. Wow, isn't that interesting? And very typical. Every student that comes onto MathWiz has a unique learning profile. So for Blake, where he had a strength in measures, where Zachary had a weakness in measures, and he had some weaknesses in fractions and in mental calculations. So very similar to Zachary, as you can see, the tutors provided extra attention for those areas as potential learning blocks for Blake, and over time provided him with a more rounded math profile. So this is very important for Mr. Turner. Mr. Turner, who wants to provide that extra attention for each one of his students in the class, is able to use MathWiz to be able to do that, to make sure that we're filling in those individual learning gaps and really progressing the children at the right pace for their individual needs. So for Mr. Turner now, he's got all this interesting data which have been derived from their individual learning journeys. How can he then actually use that within the class itself? How can he use that if he's teaching, for example, fractions this week? So let's have a look at Mr. Turner's class again to see how we could potentially do that. And we're going to go to the topics. And we're going to have a look at the topic bars view, very similar to what we saw for Zachary and Blake. So for Mr. Turner, this is an aggregate of his strengths and weaknesses of his whole class in each of the individual topic areas. As you can see, through the individualised tutoring the children have been receiving, gaps have been filled and the class has got a nice rounded learning profile now. Now it happens to be that Mr. Turner is going to be teaching fractions this week. So how can the data that we've derived from the learning journeys help Mr. Turner? Well, we can go into the Students tab here. We can pick out fractions, and instantly, before Mr. Turner approaches this individual topic, he can find out who is strong performers, who is weak performers, and who are the students who aren't even ready to take that particular topic at the moment. So that instantly gives him a heads up in terms of his small class instruction for that particular week. He'd also like, because he's teaching fractions, for that to be reinforced through the individual learning journeys that children are taking. So he's able to go to this section, Topic Focus, select fractions, and then he's able to assign fractions for his whole class for the entire week. Now remember, the lessons that each student is getting isn't the same, it's differentiated their ability. But the benefit here for Mr. Turner is he knows that the work that he's doing in the classroom is being then reinforced at the right ability level for each one of the individual students. And that's how the math teacher works, not in isolation, but in combination with the teachers within the classroom. It works like a super teaching assistant, making sure that each one of the students within the class receives an individual learning journey. It provides them a placement test and then provides a learning journey which meets their individual ability and pace of learning. So that differentiated instruction piece is met for Mr. Turner. But then that teaching assistant goes one step further. It provides data in real time for Mr. Turner to then to be able to use for his whole class and small group instruction. It's a super teaching assistant, and that's why teachers really love having MathWiz within their classrooms. So next, why don't we have a look at one of the individual lessons so you have an understanding of how we approach individual learning objectives through MathWiz. And to do that, we're going to go back to the teacher's resource section we saw earlier. We'll go through to Common Core. And as we were teaching third grade fractions, let's go to a third grade fractions lesson. We'll scroll down. Let's have a look at this one here. Recognizing unit fractions and use them to find fractions of numbers.
To find a quarter of something, split it into 4 equal groups.
As was mentioned earlier, MathWiz produces a virtual tutoring service, an instructional service that meets the needs of the individual students by simulating the behaviour of a human teacher. So when a human teacher is approaching an individual lesson, the first thing that they would do is provide a tutorial or an instructional piece. And that's exactly what happens at the start of each MathWiz lesson. There's an instructional piece that students can go backwards and forwards upon at their own individual.
To find 1/2 of something, split it into 2 equal groups. To find 1/3 of something, split it into 3 equal groups.
So students can go backwards and forwards at their own pace through this tutorial, and when they're ready, they'll start the exercise section. So the first thing that happens is tutorial. Next, they receive a series of exercises. Now, here's a really interesting point about MathWiz. What happens when the children get the question wrong? Well, what would a human tutor do? They would provide extra help or scaffolding to reinforce the underlying concept. So let's see what happens here when we get the question wrong.
Split these into equal groups.
Here you see extra help and scaffolding being provided for the children, so they get a better understanding of this particular learning objective. The use of manipulatives is obviously something which is highly encouraged within Common Core. Yeah, I think I've got that. I get the question right. So typically each lesson will have 10 questions, and each lesson has adaptivity built into it itself, but adaptivity which aligns through to as a human tutor would behave. So for example, say that Zachary was approaching this fractions lesson and he got the first 5 questions wrong. What would a human tutor do? Would he make him complete and do another 5 questions? No. The human tutor would say, let's stop there, let's come back to this at a later date, or let's go back to an earlier stage, a more foundational lesson to get you to where you need to get to. And that's exactly what happens with the MathWiz tutor. If Zachary's doing really well and gets the first 5 questions correct, then we'll progress him through to the next stage within the lesson, which is a test. It's important that children can apply the understanding they've learned from the animations and manipulatives through to an online test such as SBAC or PARC. So at the end of this section is a test without any of the manipulatives and without any of the animations. So in terms of Zachary's learning journey, it's constantly moving forwards and backwards through each individual topics, matching the ability level of Zachary at each individual level. When the lessons are undergoing, it's constantly looking at where Zachary is doing, how well he's doing, and making sure that it will either regress him or move him forward, depending on his results. very much the same way a human tutor would approach. Please use the online logins which have been provided through the award application to have a look at the content in greater detail. So finally, what we're going to do next is we're going to go and have a look at a student environment. So what a student would typically see when they log on to MathWiz. And we're going to pick a student called Diego. Now students can log on through the website, through their computers, through their Chromebooks, through their iPads, or through their Android devices. Through iPads and Android devices, you use the MathWiz app. So it's used in terms of accessibility through any device. In fact, we have a project in Aguascalientes currently where we have 50,000 students all using it on Android tablets. Each student has their own username and password, which then logs on to their personal learning environment. This is broken down into two areas: the console environment for the older children and the study environment for the younger children at elementary level. As you can see, the students can either receive their instruction in English or in Spanish. Let's go to the study environment now. There's three core parts to Diego's study environment. We have the tutoring area. So this is where the individual learning journeys are received. So to reinforce what we spoke about earlier, Diego first came onto MathWiz, he receives an initial diagnostic assessment. Then he receives a learning journey built off that topic profile to meet his individual ability and pace of learning. The second area is replay. So that's all the lessons that Diego's currently achieved within MathWiz that he's able to go back in for fluency building and reinforcement. And topic bank. So if a teacher's approaching an individual topic, Diego's able to go into topic bank and pick out lessons which have once again been differentiated to his individual ability. There's a reward system which is built into MathWiz. So here we have Diego's got 5,000 credits, and he can use those credits to buy pets, to buy plants, and to play games, to reinforce and build confidence within math. We want to make math fun, engaging, and a very safe environment for the children to be able to use. You can also see a mail function here, so teachers are able to communicate with their students and give them messages of reinforcement and congratulations if they've done particularly well. So let's have a quick look at the replay section before we finish. So these are all the lessons that Diego's undertaken on the MathWiz tutor so far, and each lesson's been provided a gold, a silver or bronze medal, depending on the time it took them to do the lesson and how well they did within it. So they're able to go back and try and build mastery within that individual lesson by trying to get that gold medal. And that's very much an important part of MathWiz, that we do the tutoring journey, but we also provide fluency and reinforcement there as well. It's a really fun thing to be able to do, is even able to click on the lesson and challenge another student from anywhere around the world of a similar ability level to himself within that individual lesson. So for those competitive students, it's a really, really nice piece. And that concludes my presentation of MathWiz today. Within the individual MathWiz suite, there's a whole range of other reporting capabilities and that we can go through, and within the teacher's resource section you'll be able to see all of the individual content and browse it at your leisure to see how we put together those individual pieces of art with the technologists, with the educationalists, and with our data analysts to make sure that each individual lesson is the best lesson for that child to take them forward in their learning journey. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much.